Welcome back to Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis. 19 games, picks and previews today. Landis, here we go. Number one. Now, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. I got a sneak peek of what our records were last week. I'm not happy about that, but otherwise I'm good.
No. All right. You want to sneak peek it then? 10-6.
Yeah.
We each went 10-6. I don't know what's wrong with us. Well, what's wrong with us is that we're missing the upsets, right? That we're not seeing them coming. We had two games that we differed on last week, and we split on those. So that's how we wound up with the same record. I picked West Virginia, and you picked Cincinnati. And then I got to find the other one. But yeah, so I mean, like, we're not, like, it's not good, Bill. It's not good right now.
It was Kansas.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You picked, it was your good upset pick. You picked Kansas over Iowa State. You saw that coming. We both missed on Syracuse. We both missed on Minnesota Rutgers. We both picked Minnesota and Rutgers won. BC, again, neither of us picked Boston College to beat Syracuse. That was wrong. We both picked Pitt, and Pitt lost to Virginia, even though they got hosed. We both picked Iowa, and they lost to UCLA. We both picked LSU, and LSU lost to Alabama. So for the season, I maintain my 9-game lead, 179-49 for me, 168-58 for you. But producer Mike was commenting as he was looking at our scores that he was surprised by some of our picks this week. So I tried to think outside the box at least a little bit. Did you?
Yeah, no. So I guess it means he was surprised by your picks.
You stayed in the box. You're comfortably in the box. Okay. Yeah. We don't have a big game breakdown this week. We have 6 games at the front that we're going to give a little more time to. And then the other 13 we'll kind of run through. We have 2 G5 games that matter. We have a Cram It game, and we have 16 Northern games, including, I think, 8 games where we got North versus North. The first game we're going to get to is not a North versus North, but it is change versus change. Mm-hmm. This is Nebraska at USC. It's a 4 p.m. Eastern start on Saturday. Nebraska is an 8.5-point underdog in this game. USC is starting a new quarterback, Jaden Mayava, who was the starter at UNLV last year. By the way, this whole thing that went nuts at UNLV with the quarterback stuff is because Jaden Mayava was like the best new quarterback in the Mountain West, and then left for USC. And UNLV was like, oh, what are we supposed to do? Let's go get the Holy Cross guy. Oh, no, he wants more money. Sport explodes. Jaden Mayava has kind of been sitting there. So it's a lot like the Dante Moore situation, where Dante Moore played last year at UCLA, then went to Oregon, is sitting at Oregon, and then is going to get his chance, except Jaden Mayava is getting it now because Lincoln Riley benched Miller Moss. So Jaden Mayava last year, 224 of 353, for more than 3,000 yards, 17 touchdowns, 10 picks. Started all 14 games as a redshirt freshman. So he's new to USC, but he's not new. And they benched Miller Moss, and then Nebraska has a new play caller, a new offensive coordinator in Dana Holgorsen. So it's new quarterback versus new play caller. So Landis, I don't know what to think.
I think I have a better feel for what to expect out of USC because we've seen Jaden Mayava play before. He seems to have all of the stuff about him that Lincoln Riley wants in his quarterback. And there were times where Miller Moss, I thought this year looked pretty good, but obviously his play wasn't up to what Lincoln Riley wants. So I think there's an opportunity for Jaden Mayava to light a little bit of a spark for USC. And I guess I would say the same for Dana Holgorsen taking over the play calling at Nebraska. But you got a freshman quarterback in Dylan Raiola, who even if we think is really good, like how does he adapt to an in-season change in play caller? Like that is definitely on my mind here. So yes, I think a lot of unexpected or hard to kind of like peg down in this game, but I certainly feel a little bit better about the USC side of it.
Miller Moss for USC, 8 touchdowns, 2 picks in the first 4 games, including a win over LSU in the opener. Last 5 games, 10 touchdowns, 7 picks. So like he threw a bad pick in their last game. That was part of it, I think. And you look at this, I looked at PFF since week 6, power conference quarterbacks, their rating by PFF, 73rd. 73rd out of 74. Oh, wait, that's not Miller Moss. That's Dylan Raiola.
Yeah.
Dylan Raiola, the only quarterback since week 6 who's lower rated than Dylan Raiola is Jack Tuttle at Michigan, who unfortunately had to retire. And Dylan Raiola is still playing. The 4 games since week 6, Dylan Raiola, 57% completions, 1 touchdown, 6 picks. 5.3 yards per attempt. Miller Moss, who got benched, is 47th among 74 quarterbacks since then. So Dylan Raiola hit the freshman wall. Like, is that what this is?
Yeah, I think so. Hit the freshman wall, and also Nebraska started playing some better teams too, right? Nebraska saw Indiana, Nebraska saw Ohio State. UCLA, I think, was in there too. UCLA's got a good defense at least. So yeah, definitely. And I not unexpectedly, I don't think for Dylan Raiola. Like I think a lot of what we saw from him early in the year was pretty impressive, but at some point you figured it was going to find its level, and I think it has. Not to say that this is indicative of what Dylan Raiola is going to be for the rest of his career, but I think he has some hurdles to overcome here to finish freshman season, and now you have the unexpected variable of a new play caller thrown on top of that.
Yeah. So Dana Holgorsen, who has been a head coach for more than a decade at West Virginia and Houston, was off this year, kind of consulting, I think, at TCU. Matt Rule reaches out. Matt Rule in this hire talking about also like it's nice to have a head coach in the building with you. He said it can be a lonely existence sometimes, and to have a guy who's been in that top seat and they're friends, and Dana Holgorsen is his Chip Kelly. Matt Rule is to Dana Holgorsen as Ryan Day is to Chip Kelly. And it also feels like Dana Holgorsen, I mean, he left West Virginia to go to Houston. That was a Power 4 job to a Group of 5 job at the time. Then Houston joined the Big 12. I don't know much about Dana Holgorsen. I think he got tired of being a head coach. He's an air raid guy. I think he wants to dial up game plans on napkins. And I think Chip Kelly has been really good for Ryan Day at Ohio State. I don't know that this happens like in 4 days at Nebraska, but I think this has a chance to be an incredibly influential hire for the future of Nebraska football, because I don't know, like, what else does Dana Holgorsen want to do? They're friends. Their wives are friends. They hang out. It's a power program. They'll pay him whatever they got to pay him if he's good at it. And he can just dial up stuff. And Matt Rule is saying, Matt Rule has some quotes when he was talking about this. He really talked about it a lot. Matt Rule will talk about stuff that's happening in his program, which I think is really good. But one of the things he said this about himself as a coach. If I'm being honest about myself, if I look back, we've always done a good job of playing really good defense. We've always done a good job of being physical. We've always done a really good job of developing players. When we've had good offenses, we've won games. So Matt Rule, I think, knows what he's good at, and I think he knows that scoring points and maybe letting it rip on offense and being a little more high-flying is not what he does best. So he went and got an air raid guy. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense for their personnel, right? It's been a little puzzling to me, I guess, that Nebraska has not been able to get more out of a passing attack with a pretty talented freshman quarterback and I think a decent receiver core, right? Like a top, I don't know, top 40, top 45, 50-ish kind of receiver core, right? Maybe even better than that. Like Isaiah Nayer's good. Corey Barney's good. Jamal Banks should be a high impact transfer. So, I think they stand a reasonable chance of this going in a good direction. To your point, I don't know if it happens immediately, but I don't know that a lot of what Dana Holgorsen will want to do will be unfamiliar to the players who are used to playing under Marcus Satterfield either. So maybe that'll be an easier transition. The thing I don't have a good feel for is like how much, like, are they just going to come out of the gate and are they going to throw it 50 times against USC? Like I don't know that. Nebraska throw rate is 48th in the country, like just under 50%. There have been times where Dana Holgorsen's teams have been creeping closer to 60%. There have been others where he's run the ball. I think he's done a nice job of sort of leaning into what his personnel does best. But for this Nebraska team, I guess provided the offensive line can hold up, it does seem like they need to get those receivers more involved and have them make more of an impact on the game than they have thus far. So I think all that kind of makes sense as an idea moving forward for the Cornhuskers. I just don't know that it gets them a win this week.
Matt Rule, he can't come in and change the offense. He can't come in and install the air raid. We're in week 11. You can come in and say, what are the things that we do well? Who are the guys that make plays? Let's figure out how to do it with those guys. I think that's the big picture that he's doing right now. He's adjusted. I think Coach Holgorsen will adjust his offense to our people, which is what you're saying. And then he's saying, like, I don't know what 3 weeks from now holds. I have no idea. The offseason is the offseason. This is not about next year. This is about right now. This is about giving our guys the best chance to go out there and win at USC. I think it has a chance to work long-term, but also give them a little boost now. I don't know that it could get worse. I mean, it could get worse. Offensive, defensive ratings, Brian Fremeau, Nebraska 60th on offense this year, 17th on defense. So it's a good defense. 60th on offense. You look at Dana Holgerson and his time at West Virginia, that drive to drive stat on offense at West Virginia in his time there, 18th, 10th, 80th, bad year, 53rd, 47th, 39th, 28th, 11th. Like, this is a guy who knows how to run a top 40 offense. Yeah. So that's where, is it going to be magical? No. But I think it will be better. But I also think it's easier for USC to put in a quarterback who started all last year at UNLV and get a boost from that than it is for Nebraska to bring in an offensive coordinator and try to fix it, which is why I'm picking USC 26-22.
Yeah, I mean, same thought process for me. I'm picking at 28-20 for USC.
Yeah. So, but I'm super curious to watch it. And
yeah,
like, it's been really bad the last few weeks. Nebraska, the last 4 weeks scored 14-7, 17, and 20. They're averaging 23.6 points per game. That's 99th in the country out of 134 teams. So just like all this stuff, it's about like when you're kind of down there, you don't have to do much to improve. I think Nebraska will be improved. I think maybe USC will be improved more. So we're both picking Bambi. Also, by the way, just like USC and Yogi, listen, like Yogi Roth, who was great with us on Wednesday, analyzes USC in a way where he doesn't call the coach Bambi. So, like, is that where we are, that they might lose a 5-star quarterback in this recruiting class in Juju Lewis, but it's like because Jaden Maeva is so good that Juju Lewis is like, it's not because USC's on fire. It's because now they're playing a young guy that Lewis wants to play early. I'm like a little uncertain of like whether USC potentially losing a 5-star quarterback recruit is a sign of how strong they are. Oh, we have such good young quarterbacks, or a sign of nobody who's good would want to go there right now.
Yeah, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, I would think, right? But Juju Lewis does strike me as someone who would want to go to a place and play immediately, and I don't know that USC would be that place for him.
Yeah. I don't want him to go to Georgia. Now he's visiting Georgia. I mean, go play Colorado.
Yeah, well, everyone thought he got like predictions to go to Colorado, and then he's like, I'm going to Georgia too. It's like, I don't know what that kid's going to do. We'll see.
Yeah. Go to Indiana. Play at Indiana next year. All right. This game is humongous, and we're not really going to be able to talk about it on Saturday night. We will do a live post-game show on Saturday. Join us on YouTube. It gets a little loose. Saturday night's our loosest show. I'm wearing a quarter zip today. This is a professional football show today. I am going to the Notre Dame Virginia game, so I'll be doing that from a hotel on Saturday night because I want to get eyes on Notre Dame, because Notre Dame is really going to matter down the stretch. Notre Dame the next week is playing Army in Yankee Stadium. I want to get eyes on Notre Dame, so I'm going to be there. It'll be in the South Bend Hotel. But Kansas at BYU is a 10:15 Eastern start, just like BYU Utah was. So this is going to be a game that we'll have to really talk about on the Monday show. But Bill, it's a big game.
It's a huge game. Yeah, it's the first game for BYU back home too, like almost in practically a month. It'll be like 2 days short of a month since BYU has last played a home game. So Kansas will be walking into a bit of a hornet's nest, I think. Night game in Provo, coming off a win in the Holy War. Hadn't had your team in front of you in almost a month. It's going to be a really tough environment for Kansas to go out and perform in. But this is also a Kansas team that is very different from the one that, couldn't win games, basically, in the first half of the season. So Kansas is 3-6 coming off of that upset of Iowa State. As we said, I think maybe it must have been on Saturday that Kansas has not yet won back-to-back games. It beat Lindenwood. It beat Houston off a bye. It beat Iowa State off of a bye. It has not stacked a win on top of a win, which is what is it now attempting to do on the road against the number 6 team in the country. So, I think that sometimes maybe we make a little too much of trends. Like, I actually think that means something. Like, there's not the Lance Leipold coming off of a week off to get ready for an opponent magic at play here, but as I said, this is a very different team. Jalen Daniels, I think, is a very different quarterback. I was poking around on some PFF stuff as well. Since week 8, which is when Kansas came off of its first bye and played Houston, the highest ranked FBS starting quarterback since that week. You'll love this, actually. Are Max Brosmer at Minnesota, Riley Leonard at Notre Dame, Curtis Rourke at Indiana, and Jalen Daniels at Kansas.
That's how we do it in the North. That's how we do it in the North. Oh, no, I haven't gotten my swords out enough lately. Read those names again. I'm feeling swordy. Read them again.
Max Brosmer at Minnesota, Riley Leonard at Notre Dame, Curtis Work at Indiana, and Jalen Daniels at Kansas.
Oh, my God. That's how we do it. Bill, there was a time when you could have read those quarterback names to me from those schools, and it wouldn't have affected my life. And today, when I hear those 4 names in a row, it gives me the juice. Let's go. That's how we do it.
It is how we do it. Some injury things here before I want to ask you. I want to ask you what you're thinking when you pick here. Keep an eye on BYU's offensive line. Center Connor Pay has missed the last 4 games, but he might come back and play in this one. I think more importantly, right tackle Braden Keim was injured against Utah last week, did not come back, and Kalani Sitake was like kind of non-committal on the idea of Braden Keim playing, so it could be a backup right tackle situation.
He's out. Aaron Roderick, the offensive coordinator, then basically said he's out for the rest of the regular season.
Okay, I didn't catch that. Yep. Thank you. So that's a new right tackle then for BYU. Kansas also has offensive line issues. It sounds like left tackle Bryce Cabledew probably will not play in this game for the Jayhawks. So that's sort of the lay of the land. You're picking Kansas.
So I got confused and I thought this was my game, so I did a lot of work on this one too.
Yeah.
I would like to thank my friends in the SEC for this take. Kansas has played an incredibly tough schedule. Kansas has 6 losses. Here are the 6 teams they lost to: 6-3 Illinois, 7-2 UNLV, 5-4 West Virginia, 6-4 TCU, 7-2 Arizona State, and 7-2 Kansas State. Every single loss, Landis, is to a winning team. How about that? I think those losses shouldn't count because they were to good teams. Okay, so now let's talk about other things. Let's talk about the 3 wins. They just beat Iowa State. The way Kansas played against Iowa State last week, that Kansas team, I went back. I know you had watched it for Monday. I went back and rewatched the whole thing. That Kansas team would win the SEC. The Kansas team that played Iowa State last week. That might be the best team that I've seen this year, was Week 11 Kansas. I cannot believe how good they were. They are ridiculous. So, yeah, they're 3-6. Yeah, they're 3-6. But schedule and eye test, I think they're in the heart of the playoff race. What do you think?
I think we only consider wins. We don't take a look at losses, right? So that's a huge win. Put them in.
Think about how good they looked last week. They looked as good as Ole Miss. BYU Ole Miss national championship game. I'm here for it. Last week, these were started with the punt, 4 straight touchdowns, a field goal, a touchdown, a missed field goal. Mm-hmm. And it affected my view of Iowa State. I almost feel bad for Iowa State. Iowa State, I thought, played great on offense and made a couple mistakes that we'll talk about when we get to the Iowa State-Cincinnati game. Kansas was pedaled down the whole way. Devin Neal set 3 Kansas career rushing records last week. Most 100-yard games, most rushing touchdowns, most rushing yards. He's a monster. Jalen Daniels, I think, should win the Heisman. I know you picked him. You were very high on him. I know they're 3-6. The 6 losses don't count. I think Jalen Daniels should go to New York. He looked like Shadur Sanders last week. He was so good. I cannot believe how good he was.
He was excellent. I've said all this already. You're just repeating what I said on Monday.
I know, but I watched it now. I think Kansas, right now, is legitimately one of the 15 best teams in the country. So I don't even think this is an upset. I think Kansas right now might be playing better football right now than BYU. It's insane to me that they have 6 losses. They were so good. They were so good. They were so good. They were so good. This is not about BYU. This is about there's a team that is hot. And when I asked you, when you were saying this on Monday, and Kansas plays BYU this week and they play Colorado next week, right? I said, do you think they'll get one of them? And you said, yeah, I think they will. So you're not picking it here. So
I'm not picking it here. Yeah, I'm not.
Why not?
I think the unsophisticated analysis of it's BYU at home at night.
That's not unsophisticated. That's real.
Yeah, that's real. I think that might help BYU avoid the upset here. But I 100% agree that BYU is going to get pushed. I have it as a field goal game, 38-35. It's a 2.5 point spread for a reason, because BYU has not played great football. It has found ways to win, which is, give them credit for it, but they've not been rocking and rolling on both sides of the ball. And Kansas definitely has been, at least on offense. The other part of it is too, like, Kansas defense is not very good. It hasn't. That's the one thing. Like, the offense has actually been pretty good all year, aside from Jalen Daniels turning the ball over.
Yeah.
The defense has been pretty bad all year, and that has remained the truth, even as Kansas has found ways to win games of late. So I'm banking on that too. Like, I think it's going to be a pretty entertaining shootout.
Yeah,
in Provo, but BYU will win.
Brian Fermeau ratings: Kansas 17th in offense, really good. BYU 47th in offense. Kansas 63rd in defense, BYU 19th in defense. So this is a test for the BYU defense. I might be a little low on the score. I have Kansas 28-24. But this is just like this. I'm just
run the ball. They both run the ball a lot.
Yeah.
So you might be on to something.
And there's been some games where we've thought maybe BYU is going to get in a shootout, and then Kalani Sitake in this defense and Jay Hill just sit on people. So I think, again, the way Kansas threw the ball all over the field and ran it with Devin Neal last week, BYU trying to sit on them might be a strategy here. I'm thinking of Kansas as the 14th best team in the country. So what would I do if a team that was ranked number 14 was going to BYU? I do think BYU might be drained. That is a crazy win last week.
Yeah,
absolutely crazy win, and it is hard to stack. And I like opportunities like that. Whereas Kansas has just been down in a pit. And now they're climbing back out. And so your point of they haven't won back-to-back games, but they were kind of left for dead. And now all of a sudden, what if they have some juice? I cannot believe how well they played. So
they still played well too against Kansas State. It was like they beat Houston, then lost to Kansas State, then were off again, and then beat Iowa State. It's not like they beat Houston and then went back to being the same team they were prior to that. So the level of play has been consistent over the last 3 games, even if it hasn't been a 3-game winning streak.
Yeah, Kansas State had to drive and pull that out at the end, right? Kansas that in a rivalry game. So I think it might be a tough spot for BYU. How much more? There was nothing left after doing that amazing comeback at Utah. I mean, that's you're giving 120% of yourself in that game. And so at home at night, that's a spot for BYU, but I think Kansas is rolling. So I went with the upset here. Again, I'm 28-24 Kansas. You're 38-35 BYU. Let's get a banger. Talk about it Monday. Ready? We're going to get a banger? Let's get a banger.
I think we will. Yeah, I think we will.
Utah, Colorado, noon Eastern. Colorado minus 11.5. I put this down as one of the games to give a little more time to, and then Brandon Rose, who started last week for Utah, got hurt late in that game against BYU and is out for the year, and now Utah is back to Isaac Wilson, who is a true freshman who had been the number 2 quarterback. They've had 3 season-ending injuries at quarterback for Utah, and so that reality made this game much less interesting to me. I do have a blowout 34-16 Colorado.
I have a 27-3. I changed my score once I learned that Utah was going back to Isaac Wilson.
Yeah.
I had it, I think, originally 27-13 or something like that. So I took some points away from the Utes because the other Brant Keithy's also out for the year.
Yes.
So that's the other part of it.
A 16 might be too much. Isaac Wilson started against Utah State and Oklahoma State. They won both those games. Then they lost to Arizona. Then Cam Rising came back and played that game against Arizona State where he could barely walk, and Kyle Whittingham kept him in the game anyway. Then he was lost for the year. And then they went back to Isaac Wilson. He was the quarterback for the TCU loss and then the Houston loss. And he got benched in the 3rd quarter of the Houston loss and then did not play last week against BYU. But now Brandon Rose is hurt. Those last 3 games that he started, all losses to Arizona, TCU, and Houston, Isaac Wilson is 50 for 95, which is 3 touchdowns. That's 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. They've had 33 possessions in those 3 games with Isaac Wilson as the quarterback. Guess how many touchdowns they've scored in those 33 possessions?
2?
3. Yeah. So that is not good. And I don't know if you watched this game, but let me tell you, I watched that Colorado game, and I'm going to tell you everything. You also did that on Monday, but to be fair to me, you told me go watch that Colorado game. Yeah. So I watched the Colorado defense from the point that Texas Tech went ahead with 7 minutes left in the 3rd quarter, 2017. And then at your suggestion, I almost had a pit in my stomach because it was so that game was so on edge with that Texas Tech crowd, and they were throwing stuff on the field, and like the refs couldn't control it, and the announcers were talking about it. Like it felt like it, but Colorado was taking it to Texas Tech in such a way. It almost gave me like a knot in my stomach that like this game is like wild. But then it was just so that combination of the way Colorado got after the quarterback, was making plays on defense. Again, they got down. Shedeur Sanders immediately led a touchdown drive, just like being himself. They hit they were hitting like little tunnel screens, making perfect perimeter blocks, letting guys loose. It was both sides of the ball, but like I'm not being facetious here. I'm not worried's not the right word, but true freshman Isaac Wilson, who was playing high school football last year, with the way the Colorado defense was playing at the end of that game, is going to be an incredibly difficult situation for Utah. And like, they don't have anywhere else to turn. So I think this could, again, I'm not sure how they get to 16. That probably was too generous by me. I think this absolutely could totally get away from Utah because Colorado is feeling it on both sides, justifiably so.
I don't disagree with any of that. The one thing I don't think we've mentioned yet is that this game is kicking off at 10 o'clock in the morning. So like what's noon Eastern. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I can very easily envision a scenario where Colorado's defense is flying around and playing with a bunch of juice, and the crowd is like on top of Utah, and Isaac Wilson just can't handle it. But it's not going to happen at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Right. Probably yes. No, I mean, I don't. Utah's so hurt. Brant Keithy, Money Parks, the receiver, Keenan Johnson, the corner, an offensive lineman, the three quarter. Like they're so hurt. They're so hurt. And Colorado is so in gear that so that's what we're talking about. Like, what can Utah do? What could stop Colorado? A kickoff time. That's wild. It's because they want it on Big Noon. They want it on Big Noon so bad they're making them play a breakfast game.
Yeah. It's kind of ridiculous if you ask me, but yes, that is what Fox is doing for Colorado, Utah in this game. I will wonder this, I guess, anytime Colorado plays a team with like any kind of a defensive line of note. Utah's number 6 in the country in havoc rate and number 6 in the country in pressure rate defensively. And while Colorado's offensive line has been much better about giving up sacks this year, Colorado still does give up a lot of sacks. So I guess there's an opportunity for Utah's defensive line to control the game a little bit. I don't know. Maybe I should stop being worried about that, but it mattered when Colorado played Nebraska, and when Nebraska's really good defensive line. So
yeah,
I could see that mattering here. That's why I don't have a huge number for Colorado. I really don't think Utah's going to score much in this game. They might get shut out in this game. But I could see it not being like absolute fireworks for Colorado's offense because Utah's defense is still pretty good.
Shedeur Sanders, again, if you guys have not watched Shedeur Sanders, he's so good. I think he's the best quarterback in the country. And I don't know that it's close. Again, after Texas Tech took that lead at 2017, they had a drive. They had like a penalty. It was 2nd and 16, and he got pressure and spun out of the pressure and just hit like a little 11-yard throw to set up a 3rd and manageable. And then they hit a screen, and then he hit an end zone fade perfectly placed. You know what Shedeur Sanders was doing in that game? That he was putting the ball like on screens right where guys could catch it and run. Like it was placement within, like not just to complete it, but and then they were out of the house on a bunch of those screens. Like just the precision of his ball placement. And then he Texas Tech was made it a game late then again. And he had a sack where he just like ran backwards 20 yards, was meandering through traffic, and then just got sacked for a 9-yard sack. And it was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like that was, but there's part of this. It's part of who he is. And so I'm willing to take the trade-off. But if it starts getting away from Colorado, which it hasn't in 2 months, you can see how, okay, there's going to be times when he's trying to make a play, and most of the time he'll make it, but sometimes he doesn't. He takes a crazy sack. So
I think more of the sacks that Colorado has allowed this year are probably or can be attributed to Shedeur just holding the ball a lot more than the offensive line getting destroyed. Whereas like last year, I think it was a lot of the offensive line getting destroyed.
Yeah, I think that's true. So I just don't. This is not going to be close. I actually kind of really like this. We'll see what happens on the betting show, but like minus 11.5 to only give up less than 2 scores here, just with the situation that Utah's in. I think I really would like that from a betting standpoint as well.
Yep.
Friday morning betting show, me and Tishu, if you want to catch that. All right, quick break. When we come back, 3 more games that we want to dive in a little bit deeper. Did I say the score? 34-16 for me, 27-3 for you. We said them. Professional podcast host, right? Do this professionally. When we come back, we'll hit those games. We'll make sure we get to every single Northern game next on Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis, Kings of the North. Give us a thumb, subscribe, drop a review. I think we'll read some reviews next week. There was a review that I saw on Apple Podcasts that was a negative review that brought up an interesting point that I would like to bring to the audience at some point. And then there's plenty of nice things that people say, and we just certainly appreciate. Bill, feedback. How wonderful is feedback to find out what people think of us?
We'll take all feedback, positive and negative. I might read more of the positive, but we'll take it all.
Yeah, we'll take it all. Oregon at Wisconsin, 7:30 Eastern. Oregon is a 14-point road favorite. Right? Wisconsin, I don't know. Not so great. Maybe start to figure it out a little bit. And then, we did it.
Yeah.
He's laughing because we finally did it. Look at us. The same score. Is this the first time we've actually done the same score?
I think
what
maybe.
Is wrong with this? 31-20. We both picked Oregon 31-20, which is not covering, but we is this the first one, Mike? Is this the first one that you noticed that we picked? I think it is.
Mike. I don't believe so. I think you guys did week 1.
Oh, okay.
And I'm gonna look real quick.
Okay. Yeah. So here we are.
But yeah, you guys keep going. But yeah, I think there was one in week 1. When I find it, I'll tune in.
Look at us. Look at us. Right. Wisconsin not looking great. Then actually they seem to find it for like 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks. And now they feel like they've kind of lost it again. I was starting to creep Landis when Wisconsin was like maybe figuring it out toward this could be a thing for Oregon. And now I'm like I'm enough there to take Wisconsin plus the 14, but not enough there to think like, oh man, Oregon could actually go lose this game. Is that kind of how you're seeing it?
100%. I don't know how much Wisconsin found it as much as it found Purdue and a banged up Rutgers, right? So, but I was feeling the same way as it was happening. Think like, oh, maybe that game could be interesting when Oregon goes to Madison. But no, I do. So Wisconsin is coming off of a bye, and I am wondering how much Oregon might have left in the tank here. Well, there's 2 things. One, like Oregon has not blown out teams, I think, the way you might expect them to. They just sort of run out and has kind of put it on cruise control. And I think they've been trying to like manage some health here as Oregon gets ready to play its 8th game in 8 weeks. And not from a point spread gambling standpoint of blowouts. They've not
always
covered.
Like always like in control. Always in control.
No, never not in control of a game. Yeah, always in control of the game. Just not, they're not winning 52-0 like you would expect the number 1 team in the country to win sometimes. But as I said, this is the 8th game in 8 weeks for Oregon, and I believe I was like trying to figure this out. I think I have it right that they are the only Power 4 team that has played every week over that span. Everyone else has had at least a week off over the 8 weeks that Oregon has played a game.
Oh, interesting.
So, and there's been some back and forth. Like they had to go out to Michigan, they went back home, now they're going back out to Madison. So I think that will catch up a little bit with Oregon in a way that allows Wisconsin to cover. I don't know that it makes Oregon sweat this all that much. It might even be like a late score maybe for Wisconsin to cover. There's a couple injury things for Oregon. Jordan James and Jordan Birch were both injured against Maryland last week late in the game. Jordan Birch in the 4th quarter had like tweaked his ankle, and Jordan James, I think, he came out of the game, but people, like the reporters were there, so like he was on the sideline with his helmet ready to go if they wanted to put him back in the game. So I don't know that. And Dan Lanning didn't really make it sound like either one of them was in jeopardy of not playing this week. Doesn't sound like either one is super serious, but I think at the very least, maybe you're not going to get 100% Jordan James. You're not going to get 100% Jordan Birch. And we've seen, like when Oregon went to go play at Purdue earlier this year, Jordan James was very much on a pitch count in that game. I think he had 10 carries after the Ohio State game. So they might rely on some backup running backs, and they're good. Like Noah Whittington's a really good running back. it's not to say that Oregon can't be a good team if either of those guys are somewhat limited, because they've been without Jordan Burch for a long time, and they have running back depth that they can rely on. But they're just like some things kind of piling up that make me think that maybe Oregon won't run away with this game. But still win it. I think. I don't know that we're watching this game in the fourth quarter wondering if this is the one that Oregon drops.
Where are you with the Wisconsin offense at the moment? Because you were at times like, I don't think this Phil Longo thing is working. Might be the last year of this. And then I certainly was like, I don't know. I think maybe they figured it out. They did get back to running the ball more. And then like the last time when they played Iowa, it was just like a mess on both sides of the ball. So like, where are you officially on that?
Yeah, kind of back to where I was before the mid-season resurgence, because it was just they finally played a team that has a good defense, and then it went back to looking the way that it's looked for much of the year. Like I like Tyree Walker as a running back. I think he's good. I liked when it kind of felt like he was the engine of the offense, and the passing game was more of a complement to that. So I think that is the right kind of formula for Wisconsin moving forward and trying to salvage something out of this season, which could, and like, they still go to a bowl game, right? So it's not like the season's over. But I was pretty excited, I think, about what we were seeing in the moment with the offense from Wisconsin, and I have very much cooled on that idea. And I think I've gone back to go get a new offensive coordinator and get Phil Longo out of here territory.
Okay. So 31-20 for both of us. We picked the same score. We see the game the same way. 7:30 Eastern kick for that one.
So there was two instances so far that I've found so far. So week one, you guys both picked 38-13 to be the final score for Nebraska and UTEP. And that was a final score of 40-7. Nebraska won.
Oh, that's pretty good.
And then you guys picked 27-20 Kansas State to beat BYU. And that game turned out BYU 38-9.
Oh, that was wrong.
Not bad.
Yeah. That one was wrong.
So,
okay.
Those are the two instances I found so far.
We have picked like 230 games so far. So actually, I mean, the way that we share a brain, I'm actually surprised it hasn't happened more often.
There's been many games where you guys have like 1 or 2 points off, or like you guys pick the same number for the same team. But yeah, so.
Okay. That's good to know. Maybe I'm sure we'll have it one more time at least, Landis, before the end of the year. So 31-20. If this hits on 31-20, I'm buying everybody a Snickers. Everybody who's in the everybody pack of cigs for everybody currently in the YouTube chat if this game is 31-20, and you'll just have to come back in and say, I was in the YouTube chat, here is my personal home address, please send me some candy cigarettes. And then I'll just give all the addresses to Mike and say, hey, mail these out. Or I'll just say, actually, maybe you guys just have to come to my house and I'll have the candy cigarettes on the porch and you guys can come pick a pack. Arizona State at Kansas State, 7 p.m. Eastern. Kansas State favored by 8 at home. So, like, if Arizona State was in the North, we'd be talking about these guys a lot. They're interesting.
Yeah, they are.
Kenny Dillingham is the youngest head coach in college football. They're 7-2. Sam Leavitt is a transfer from Michigan State. He's up the North. Cam Skattebo is a guy a running back who's played really well. And here's the thing about Arizona State, and like you have to look at them a certain way. I think it's important. So Sam Leavitt, they lost at Cincinnati when Sam Leavitt, their quarterback, was hurt. I think that was 24-14. So it's like, I throw that game out. It's a nice win for Cincinnati, but Sam Leavitt has actually been really good for them.
Their
this year.
backup is Jeff Sims, right?
Oh, so that's so really throw that out. Jeff Sims, Georgia Tech, Nebraska. Yeah. Since week 6, right? We're looking at all these since week 6 quarterback numbers. Sam Leavitt from Arizona State is number 6 in the Power 4 and the way he's been playing. And then Cam Skattebo, the running back, didn't play last week. So last week, Arizona State only beat Central Florida on the road 35-31. They had a pick 6 and a block punt touchdown in that game. So they had 2 non-offensive touchdowns and they had to drive late to win. But they didn't have the running back. And their backup running backs ran it 21 times for 77 yards. Cam Skattebo is like one of the 10 best running backs in the country. So when they have both those guys, they are really tough to beat. And Kansas State's had a little trouble running the ball the past couple weeks. DJ Giddens and Dylan Edwards, I think last time out, 3.2 yards per carry, 25 for 81. The week before that, they were okay, but they had 2 gigantic plays where they gained like 100 rushing yards on 2 plays. Every other play was 19 for 64, which is not great, 3.4. And the week before that, Edwards and Giddens, 3.9 yards per carry. So like there's some concern about Kansas State's ability to run the ball. They are coming off a bye, and Avery Johnson was a little banged up, but I think, Chris Kleiman was saying they're pretty healthy. He's feeling better. Off a bye is a deal. But I think Arizona State's pretty good and kind of pushing for something. So I am going upset here, even though it's south over north, and my heart doesn't want to let me do that. But Kansas State kind of is not really in the thick of the Big 12 race anyway, so I'm not like blowing up their season. But I'm taking Arizona State 30-23 here.
I mean, Arizona State could find itself in the thick of it if it gets some help, right? Like the Arizona State wins the Big 12 scenario is not that outlandish, right?
This is basically a Big 12 eliminator game because both these teams have 2 losses, so the loser's out, but the winner stays in. And then you just need some help with a Colorado loss and like some crazy stuff happening in tiebreakers, and so you're not out of it. No, you're not. They're not out of it. So this is a really important game, which is why we put it in our games that deserve a little more talk. Mm-hmm. This is 2 7-2 teams that are still playing for a lot. So like this has a chance to be like a really good competitive game, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Kansas State has been pretty good run defense wise this year, like on the whole, but it did give up a decent amount against Kansas. It was 192 yards and almost 6 yards per carry against probably the best rushing team it has seen this year. And Kansas is one of the best rushing teams in the country and has been all year. So part of the statistical profile for Kansas State like might be a little bit misleading. If it's not, then maybe it can control Cam Scotabo a little bit. And Sam Levitt, I think, is interesting. I remember like there were definitely times when Sam Levitt was at Michigan State where people thought he was the future.
And, for sure. Yeah.
And there were like, I think there was a hesitancy to like play him much as a true freshman so as to not like overexpose him to things or whatever. But, and then he obviously just left. So I think funnily enough, I think he is from Oregon. And then he left when the coach from Oregon State came to Michigan State.
Yeah.
But he's a pretty good player.
Guy. Broadest guy.
Right. Yeah. So, but I think he is a pretty good player. But if Kansas State can get it to a game where Sam Levitt like has to beat him throwing, then maybe that's where you want it. Not that Kansas State's pass defense is great, but I think you don't want Cam Scotabo to just run all over you, which he has done to plenty of teams this year. And I think maybe Kansas State's defensive front might be up for limiting that a little bit. At least that's what I had in my mind when I made my pick. So I'd pick Kansas State because I was banking on that, and I think I'm banking on a healthier / refreshed Avery Johnson, putting a good Avery Johnson out there, not a volatile Avery Johnson out there. So I had Kansas State by 10, 31-21.
Big opportunity off an off week, right? Like bring your best, but I think they'll need to bring their best. And as you said, the Kansas State run defense, EPA per rushing attempt, number 10 in the country defensively against the run. So like again, statistically there, but there have been teams who, as you said, Kansas did run it on Kansas State. So another banger. Like this is one of the better games of the week. If we were just lining up the 10 best games of the week, right? And it's like, okay, we understand that Tennessee, Georgia is like a top 10 or whatever, top 12 matchup. This is like right up there. So like watch
I would say that if you take Tennessee and versus Georgia out of the equation, that Kansas, BYU, and Arizona State, Kansas State might be the 2 most interesting games of the weekend.
Yeah. Good luck to the state of Kansas. Thanks for being part of the North, man. Boston College at SMU. Hold on to your butts. 3:30 Eastern. Boston College is a 19-point dog, and I picked them. Yeah,
what the heck? What are you doing? All right.
Yeah, I picked them. So this is the deal. This is your game, but we know what's going on. We have to talk about this together. We have not talked about our guy, Touchdown Tommy Castellanos, who unfortunately was benched by Bill O'Brien this week and then chose to take some time away from the team and then has since left the team and entered the transfer portal. So Thomas Castellanos did not stick around Chestnut Hill to be a backup to Grayson James. What do you think of that? we don't know anything from an inside perspective at all. But it is a little unusual for your starting quarterback to be benched and then leave the team in the middle of the year. But I also kind of get it. So what are your thoughts?
I guess so when Bill O'Brien took the job, I wondered about that marriage, right? And yes, how exactly it would go, and whether or not Bill O'Brien would ever embrace the idea of someone like Thomas Castellanos, who is a little bit of a gunslinger, freelancer, at times madman, run around, scramble, do all kinds of crazy stuff. If he would ever want that in his quarterback. And I think they tried to find a way to make it work, but in the process of doing that, I think he actually made Thomas Castellanos for lack of a better word, a worse quarterback, or like at least a worse version of himself. They tried to make him a pocket passer, and he did take steps forward statistically as a passer. But the thing that makes Thomas Castellanos, Tommy Touchdown, is his playmaking ability. And you take some of the wildness with it, right? Because that's part of the charm, I guess. I don't know. And they just really took that away from him. If you look at some of the numbers from this year compared to last, he had 125 designed rushing attempts last year. He has 39 this year, or had 39 this year. They also weren't. All that being said, he also was throwing the ball less this year than he did last year. Last year was 25 attempts per game. This year is 20 attempts per game. I think Bill O'Brien's approach this entire season was trying to limit the opportunities of putting Thomas Castellanos in a position to make a mistake that would prove costly for them. And I would imagine, I don't know, I'm just spitballing because, like you said, we don't know anything. I would imagine there might have been some tension there because of that. Because it's not like Thomas Castellanos has been awful all year. And he didn't play great last week. He started the game 2 of 7 for 14 yards, a touchdown and a pick, and he got hurt. And then Grayson James went in and played better, managed the game better. But I guess maybe I just feel like this was inevitable, that at some point Bill O'Brien was going to want to make a quarterback change. I'm just a little surprised that it took until the middle of November for it to happen, and now Thomas Castellanos is no longer with the program.
Yeah. I don't know that we have to figure out if somebody is at fault here. I think the way and Thomas Castellanos was a transfer already. He started off at UCF and then went to Boston College and took over as the starter last season, was the starter this season. So that's not that unusual. I think I understand if you're being benched and you maybe don't fit what the new head coach wants out of his quarterback. The writing's on the wall. You could stay and be there. And then if Grayson James, something would happen to him, you're ready to go back in. That would be ideal, I suppose. But he's getting a jump on the portal for a couple weeks. And I think you reserve the right to bench your starting quarterback. So I don't know that there has to be somebody at fault here. It's an unfortunate situation. And Thomas Castellanos dragged Boston College to a bowl game last year, right? Thomas Castellanos has been great for Boston College. But we also think that Bill O'Brien was a great hire for Boston College. It's just probably separately they've been really valuable there. Together, it's not the right pairing. And they beat Florida State before everyone knew Florida State stunk. But this has probably been more successful than they anticipated, maybe. And so they have a winning record at this point in the season. And it's well, why would you pull the plug on a team, in a situation where you're only one game away from a bowl, right? If they're 5-4, if they were 2-7, this might have already happened. But to everybody's credit, they're not. To Donovan Ezaraku's credit, to the run game's credit, to the offensive line's credit, to Thomas Castellanos' credit, to Bill O'Brien's credit. And they've actually had some games where they could have won more games. But they got loose a couple times, right? I mean, they were right on the edge with some stuff. Yeah. And it's a little strange, not strange, but it's coming off a win. But they were right there with Louisville. They turned the ball over a bunch against Virginia Tech, but they were there in that game. They were right there with Missouri on the road in an SEC environment to lose by 6. They've been right there the whole year. So I think we can chalk it up as unfortunate and best of luck to Thomas Castellanos. I think he can be a successful starting quarterback for a variety of FBS teams, and hope he finds a good spot.
Yeah, yes, I think that's right. And also, Bill O'Brien is in an environment where this will just go away. I think if he were anywhere else and he benched a starting quarterback with this stat line, the performance has not warranted the decision, in my opinion. So if he did this like anywhere else, I think this would be a story that like hovers over this team in like a pretty negative way, but it won't because Boston College doesn't get covered by a lot of people. And like maybe Grayson James will go out there and play really well in this game. You're picking him to win against SMU, but like Thomas Castellanos as a passer was better by every metric you could care to look at. And they have a winning record. And he benched him. So like that, like there's more to it. Like, and I whatever, I won't theorize on what that more to it is, but clearly it's not just performance based why Bill O'Brien made this decision, because it doesn't, if it was, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So what do you think is going to happen? I've got circle the wagons. They ran for 300 yards as a team last year. Last week, Kai Robichaux and Jordan McDonald were awesome, and they lean into that. Grayson James manages the game. They don't turn it over. SMU maybe is starting to feel some pressure as all of a sudden they have a path to the ACC championship game and a playoff spot. And now here comes this 20-point underdog that kind of had a thing happen in their program. And it's like, okay, we've got these guys. And then all of a sudden, like Boston College just grinds out a win nobody saw coming. That's a circle the wagons, that kind of program win to me. But what's the football?
I don't know that they have the horses to pull the wagons. against SMU, you know, I think
Pony Express against the Pony Express.
Yeah.
Holy moly,
the horses are on the other side.
I
like part of me does wonder if Bill O'Brien just felt like the team might respond better to Grayson James, and that's part of the reason why he made this decision. So if that's the case, then maybe BC does circle the wagons, like runs it, controls the game, shortens the game, and wins. If BC wins, I think it will be a horrendous looking football game, but that's okay because a win's a win for BC.
Yeah.
I just don't know that they're capable of that. Like SMU seems to be rolling pretty good here. It's good on both sides of the ball. It's explosive in a way that Boston College is not. So I just don't see a real clear football path for BC here other than like really mucking it up.
They did just beat an explosive team last week in Syracuse in a kind of a mucky game, but they just ran the ball and ground it out. Now, the Syracuse defense is not great, but right?
Yeah, but I also think that SMU is substantially better than Syracuse.
Kyle McCord threw for 392 last week, career high. Boston College won. So that's. I'm not saying that Syracuse is a better team than SMU, but I'm saying if we're asking what it looks like, it's like, well, they kind of are coming off that kind of win where it's like, well, I don't know. Did they really stop anybody? What'd they do? They just ran the ball down their throats in a game where like their quarterback they felt was playing poorly enough that they had to make a quarterback change. And then they just kept running the ball and it worked. So 26-24 Boston College. I know. But they're
SMU number 5 rushing defense in the country.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, I'll change my pick. I didn't know that. It wasn't my game to look up. I didn't look that up. Number 5 in the whole country based on what? Some made up thing?
No. Well, they held BYU to under 4 yards a carry, held Louisville to under 4 yards a carry, held Pitt to under 4 yards a carry, and then everyone else they played isn't very good.
Okay. All right. Fancy stats and pancake balls. We're back. Fine. I rescind it. No, I don't rescind it.
You don't rescind it. It's out there.
It's out there. It's in the graphic. Once it's in the graphic, that's it. It's baked in. All right. You have SMU 38-17. That's quite a victory for the Fighting Mustangs. Okay. Eagles. We'll see what happens. By the way, you think I'm crazy. We both picked Pitt to go down there and beat SMU. And so
but I said at the time that I didn't believe in it. I just picked them with my heart.
And then you learned. You are capable of learning.
SMU
I'm doubling down. Yeah. I'm doubling down. I'm hitting on 19. Okay, when we come back, a bunch more games to run through, including Ohio State-Northwestern, Penn State-Purdue, Virginia-Notre Dame, all of that next on Kings of the North. Kings of the North back with Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis. Ohio State at Northwestern in Wrigley Field, noon Eastern. Ohio State is a 28.5-point favorite, Bill, and hopefully nobody runs into any of the outfield walls.
Yeah, there's some concern about that, I guess. The line's moved. It was, I think it opened to 30.5, 31 at some places, and it's come down a little bit. I think that is entirely reflective of Ohio State, like just kind of playing slow, and Northwestern, when it has the ball, will also play slow. So I think it ends up being maybe a lower possession kind of game, and that's why the spread has come down a little bit. I don't think it has anything to do with like no injuries on Ohio State side, and Northwestern even is actually potentially a little banged up in this game. So you'd think it'd go the other way otherwise. Northwestern's 0-3 in games at Wrigley Field. So not much of an advantage for them there. There will it should be pretty nice weather. The last time Ohio State played Northwestern on the road, there were like 60 mile an hour, 70 mile an hour wind gusts, and neither team could throw the ball. And that was a horrendous looking game. So this should be, I think, an Ohio State rolls spot. Can I give you one weird statistical kind of oddity I found when looking into Northwestern a little bit?
Yeah.
Northwestern's pass defense has only allowed 7 pass plays of 30 yards or more, which is tied for like the 4th fewest in the country. But it has also given up 101 pass plays of 10 yards or more, which is like there are like 9 teams that have only given up more than that. So like you can get 10 all day on, but you can't get 30. You can't get 30. It's very odd.
Yeah, maybe that's the strategy of like, we'll just give them the 10. So they don't even try to get to 30. Just take the 10. Take this free 10. So this is just Ohio State trying to stay healthy, do its thing, enjoy playing in a cool baseball stadium, and then get ready for Indiana.
Yeah, I think so. I guess the one thing I would be on the look for Ohio State is if it tries to get some downfield passing calibrated ahead of the Indiana game. It's been a big topic of discussion for Ohio State all year. I know I just said that Northwestern doesn't give up a ton of big pass plays, but I don't think they can cover Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka and Carnell Tate. So it could absolutely be an opportunity for Ohio State to just like run the ball, get your win, and go home kind of thing. But Northwestern's run defense is actually pretty good this year, statistically anyway. So I think maybe you'll see Ohio State try to air it out a little bit in this game.
And this is Ohio State's last chance to maybe catch its breath before Indiana showdown in the shoe, potentially a top 5 matchup unless Ohio State gets upset here. The Ohio State-Michigan rivalry game that Ohio State has lost 3 in a row, and its entire existence is based around not letting Michigan win 4 in a row. Then potentially a Big Ten championship game, maybe with a rematch against Oregon, the only team that's beaten them this year. And then maybe 3 or 4 playoff games. Yeah. So this is like enjoy it. I used to, I'd go to Wrigley when I was in college. I'd go to Wrigley. I'd get a big gulp. I'd get like a little, I'd get a hamburger at McDonald's, and I'd go get a $6 ticket and sit in the left field bleachers and have a lovely day. One time I wrote a story for like some kind of magazine. I don't even think they paid me any money, but it was like a day at Wrigley Field. And somebody like on the street outside Wrigley was drawing caricatures. So I was like, oh, this will be a good little thing to put in my magazine piece. And they drew my caricature. And if I was a better podcast and YouTube show host, I'd have that right now because I think it's in my house. But I looked exactly like Gary Busey.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
young Gary Busey or current Gary Busey?
No, like current, like after just ravaging his own body and like his face kind of melting, like that kind of Gary Busey. Nice. Yeah, not like Buddy Holly Gary Busey. And so do that. I thought I would tell like Ohio State potentially, no offense to Northwestern, but like try to chill, maybe go to, if you take the starters out early, maybe they send them over to the Cubby Bear, a couple of the Wrigley bars around there and get like your last breath because like the gauntlet's coming for Ohio State. Yeah. So the playoffs are starting now.
Yeah. Ohio State put a bunch of young guys into the game early against Purdue. Yeah. I think they will probably try to do the same here.
So I have 42-7 Ohio State.
I have 35-7 because I think it could end up being a slower paced kind of game.
Okay. Penn State at Purdue, very similar situation of a team with 1 loss, potentially on a playoff path against an overmatched opponent. This is a 29-point spread. We did it again. Mike's like, oh, let me go back in the archives. We picked the exact same score.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you were like, oh, it'll happen at least one more time this year. And I was like, well, wait 10 minutes.
2 games. We both picked 42-7 Penn State over Purdue. If you noticed, I picked this is the same score I picked for Ohio State-Northwestern because it's like the same thing to me. I will advise people that there's a chance that the betting show on Friday is going to have a heavy Penn State-Purdue lean to that. 3:30 Eastern. Deny Dennis Sutton. Great Penn State defensive lineman's only played 13 snaps the last 2 weeks. Reporters who were there Wednesday night at practice said he's still limited in practice, so still trying to get him back to health. When that happens, that will certainly help the defense. Nick Singleton played the great running back, part of the running back combo with Katron Allen for Penn State, only played 22 snaps against Washington, came out in the third quarter. He seems fine from what reporters saw at practice, so that is good news. And then again, last week, just kind of getting back to maybe who they were. And we've been talking about this a lot. Feels like Ohio State learned from the Oregon loss. If Penn State can learn from the Ohio State loss, they did it last week against Washington. They got Bo Prabula more involved. They got Ty Warren involved around the goal line. There's a lot, I think, there for them still. And this is another chance to show that. So like Penn State getting to maximum Penn State is still a huge part of Northern football and college football. And so how Penn State looks in this game, Landis, I think really does matter.
Yeah, you want to see Penn State ramping up to what looks like a very likely playoff berth, right? With Purdue, Minnesota, and Maryland left. Like, go play your best football. Go into the postseason hot. Yep.
Drew Aller last week did say he thought that was that first half they played where they just like marched up and down the field, scored on their first 4 possessions. 4 third down conversions early in that game, 4 for 4 in the red zone. Like he said, it was the best half they play all year. So like there's a lot to continue. And meanwhile, Purdue is yelling at its fans to not suggest that Ryan Walters should be fired. So they Purdue basketball has started, and it's one of those where our northern teams where maybe there's a lot of basketball interest and the basketball program is perhaps more successful than the football program. You're seeing some shifts, like Purdue incredibly successful at basketball, but 7'4" freshman Daniel Jacobson, I guess like the next Zach Edey, broke his leg. So that's unfortunate for Purdue. I guess he's probably out for the year, but they had warned. So I guess at their first home game, the students were chanting "Fire Walters." And so people probably saw this. They sent out like, don't chant that anymore. So then the most recent game on Monday, they only beat Yale by 8. You know how Yale is though. Yale's just a bunch of Yale
of the North. Yeah.
Of the North. And so they didn't chant that. So everybody was happy that they listened to the missive. Don't chant for a football coach to be fired. So
I think you should be allowed to chant for an underperforming football coach to be fired.
I think you probably should be allowed to also, but they said they would kick you out. So I think it was like you are risk being ejected from the game if they find a student who is chanting for Ryan Walters to be fired. I don't know what would happen if maybe the football fans would chant it. Are they going to eject everybody out of the stadium of Ross-Ade Stadium on Saturday? If the football fans get there, is it only a basketball thing? I don't know.
I think Penn State will eject them. We don't have to worry about that.
So anyway, all right. So 42-7, book it. And again, we'll double the cigarette bet. Come to my house for free candy cigarettes if we get this one right also. Clemson at Pitt. We had talked about going to this if Pitt had not lost to Virginia last week. Hosed. I think I'd be at this one, but we've been at Pitt. We haven't been at Notre Dame. And it's like, okay, like Clemson still is in the mix in the ACC, but I'm not there to document Dabo's comeback story. Are you freaking kidding me? So I'm going to Notre Dame instead. It's a noon kickoff Eastern. Pitt is a 10-point underdog at home, Bill.
Yeah, like Pitt did get hosed last week, and we almost picked the same score again here. Pitt did get hosed, but it also continues to not play very well on offense. That was consistent in that game, even though they did have a chance at the end to win it. 4.3 yards per play there against Virginia, which actually in the stretch of games where Pitt has played terribly in offense, that's its lowest yards per play output of the season. And it came with Eli Holston getting injured and Nate Yarnell having to play a chunk of that game. Pat Narduzzi was asked about Eli Holstein, and the way he answered it was like the only guy you won't see out there is Branson Taylor, who's the tackle who we know is out for the year. But then he also said like whether or not Eli Holstein plays isn't up to him; it's up to the trainers. So I don't know that it's a guarantee that Eli Holstein plays. I think the fact that it's a 10-point line suggests that he probably is, because I think it'd be more.
So producer Mike is popping in here and says that Pat Narduzzi just said that Eli Holstein is not yet cleared.
He's not cleared yet. Okay, so I mean, I wouldn't be picking Pitt either way, just because the offense has really gone stale. And I don't know that they're going to be able to do anything against Clemson's defense. Clemson also, I think, is going to get back Peter Woods. It's a very talented defensive lineman who hasn't played in a couple of games. So I like Pitt might have a heck of a time blocking him. And Pat Narduzzi also, like, I read it, so it's quite possible. Like, if I heard it, I would hear it differently. But he was talking about like the way the season has gone and how it was able to pull out some games earlier in the year. And at the end, he said your luck starts to run out a little bit. And it's like, if you're looking at this as being lucky and or unlucky, then I don't think you're like quite taking the right approach to how your season has gone. But like I said, it's quite possible.
They got hosed. Maybe you're hosing. It's unlucky to get hosed by the refs and who give an extra down to Virginia.
Is it unlucky to go 7 games in a row, averaging less than 5 yards a play? That's all unlucky.
That would have been a fine follow-up question by you.
You know what I mean?
But also it's also like, I mean, but that's also a little bit true, right? I mean, like they were like, to their credit, they were finding ways to win, right? In games where they easily could have lost. And now they've kind of been playing on the edge a little bit all year. So I certainly get what he's saying. You know, but come on, don't question. You think Nardog's not giving in. He's just speaking the truth. Also,
no, maybe it is an acknowledgement of just like, you know, we've been asking for this all year. We just got away with it for the first 7 games kind of thing. Maybe that's it. There was a time certainly after that Syracuse game where we both thought Pitt was gearing up for something and that this game was going to be very interesting. And maybe it could be, maybe Pitt flips a switch and the offense does something here, even if it is Nate Yarnell, a quarterback, guy who's at least played some. So I don't want to be totally dismissive of that possibility, but I think Clemson, I think is not. I think at this point it's fair to say Clemson is not quite as good as people thought it was when it started ripping off wins against bad teams after it lost to Georgia. But I still think it is a decent stretch better than Pitt. So I have 27-14 Clemson,
and I disagree vehemently, and I have 27-13. Clemson. So we're a point off on that one. Virginia at Notre Dame. I'll be at this one in South Bend, 3:30 Eastern. Notre Dame, a 22.5-point home favorite, 4-0 versus Virginia. It is senior day for Notre Dame. Notre Dame, 6 home games, 3 road games, 3 neutral site games this year. So they finished the season against Army and Yankee Stadium and then at USC. So 29 seniors will be honored on Saturday. Howard Cross sprained his ankle. Great defensive lineman, sprained his ankle against Florida State. Out this week, maybe longer. Carson Hinish filled in and had 2 sacks against Florida State. I think I'm saying his name right. And they've just been overcoming stuff all year. They've had 5 starters lost for the year to injury. And they keep doing what they're doing. So I am like, I think we both are like, we are really both coming around on Notre Dame, and they put people away in the second half, right? Like that. I think because they know they're completely out of wiggle room with the loss to Northern Illinois, they have to keep impressing people. This is a stat from Tim Prister at 24/7 Sports. In Notre Dame's 6 most decisive victories this season, they scored 143 points in the first half and 134 points in the second half, which is point is like they are not taking their foot off the gas. Yeah. So this is like another, like, I think, interesting betting opportunity because like they are throttling people. Virginia is coming off this win over Notre Dame. They can run the ball okay. Xavier Brown and Kobe Pace had 27 carries for 120 last week against Pitt. But Notre Dame's just handling business, man. Again, 2 offensive linemen out for the year, a bunch of defensive guys out, and they continue to do what they do. So I have a blowout 41-12, and again, we are right on top of each other.
Yeah, I have 42-10. I don't think Notre Dame's going to mess around with bad teams moving forward. Because it knows that I think it's probably okay, even if it did, but it doesn't want to leave that to chance. So if it has the opportunity to blow a team out, it's going to do it.
Yeah. Michigan State at Illinois. This is a good Big Ten Northern banger, brother. 2:30 Eastern. Illinois is a 3-point favorite.
So Michigan State is 4-5, staring down bowl eligibility if it can get 2 more wins out of 3 remaining games at Illinois, against Purdue, and against Rutgers. I think you probably like the Purdue game there, right? But I would say that at Illinois and Rutgers are toss-ups. This one certainly is. Rutgers, I think, is too. So, like, it's a pretty big spot, I think, for Jonathan Smith, right, in his first season at that program. It would be a huge deal, in my opinion, for Michigan State to get the bowl eligibility.
Sure.
Play in the postseason, get some extra practices, keep developing Aiden Childs, all that stuff. They're pretty banged up. They have been banged up all year. They're dealing with some stuff in the secondary now. I think some injured guys might play, but I don't know that I love like a banged up secondary trying to contend with what Illinois is capable of at times through the air. Aiden Childs, I think, will play. He was hurt the last game against Indiana, but they were off for a week, and he should be good to go in this one. So they'll at least have him. They'll have the receivers. They'll have the running backs. Like the offense, more or less, I think will be what we've seen from Michigan State. It's just that the defense might be dealing with some stuff. Meanwhile, Illinois, I think, is fairly healthy coming off of a week off, and or not a week off, excuse me. But safety Miles Scott will miss the first half of the game because he's ejected for targeting against Minnesota. So it could be like an early opportunity for Michigan State to kind of attack Illinois down the field. But I think my view on it is just that Michigan State's defense, I don't think will be up to stopping what Illinois is able to do through the air. So I have Illinois winning, but it's a really interesting spot for the Spartans. I think like an instructive spot, I guess, for what that team is about, while it still has something to play for.
And you were right. Illinois is off a bye week too. Yeah. So they lost to Minnesota, like a disappointing loss for them last time out, 25-17. Their other 2 losses are to like 2 playoff teams in Oregon and Penn State. So I don't think like Brett Bielema is not going to let this season slip away from them here. I don't know that, you're at home off a disappointing home loss to Minnesota with an off week, and it's your last home game. So this is also a senior day experience for Illinois. They're at Rutgers and then at Northwestern in Wrigley to end the year. I think this Illinois team has found too many ways to win and has stood up too many times this year and shown who they are, that I don't think they go out this way. I don't think they go out by losing to Michigan State here. So you and I both have like pretty solid, like low scoring sit on them wins. I have 21-10 Illinois.
Yeah, I have 27-17. I'm a little surprised. This is last I saw was 2.5 points. Illinois was favored. I don't know if that's moved or not, but like that, just based off of a lot of what you said, I would not. And Illinois hasn't played its best football in a couple weeks, so maybe that's it. But I think Illinois has got a lot more to it this year than Michigan State.
Yeah. Okay, Syracuse at Cal, 3 Eastern, noon out there in California. Syracuse is a 9-point dog on the road here. And why am I supposed to think Cal's good? I don't understand why I'm supposed to think Cal is good. Cal won its first 3, lost its next 4, won its last 2, including its first ACC win ever at Wake Forest last week. Kyle McCord threw for a career-high 392 against Boston College last week. According to Syracuse, there are 2 schools in the country that have at least 3 players averaging 65 receiving yards per game or more. One is Ohio State, and the other is Syracuse with Jackson Meeks, Trevor Pena, and Rade Gadsden. 1-1 in the series. They haven't played since 1968. Why is Cal good? You're picking Cal. I don't know. Like, why is Cal good? I feel like this is Syracuse go check. Do they? I don't.
Cal's got a good defense. Cal's got a good running game when Jaden Knott plays. Yeah, they're like a decent mid-tier team, which is also, I think, what Syracuse is. But Syracuse has to fly to Berkeley to go play this game.
Mad, but they're flying mad. I think
they're flying with a stinky coach and needs to take a bath.
I know. Well, but that's okay. But they're playing in Boston and then Berkeley. How crazy is that?
Did you see Kyle McCord said that it's his job to get Fran Brown washed, which is like the weirdest thing a player's ever said about his head coach?
I did not see that. Maybe I chose to not see that. Yeah. Oh, but he means it's Kyle McCord's job to win so that Fran Brown can shower after the game.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah.
No, I believe in this. Like I refuse it. I refute your efforts to tell me that Cal is good. I refute it. You're refuted.
Okay. I think Kyle McCord might throw 4 interceptions in this game.
I refute you. I think he might break his career single game passing career high. He had 392 last week. Give me 4 bills for Kyle McCord out in Berkeley. How about that? I'm stabbing you. This is the first time I'm stabbing you because you love Cal. Just because they have Twitter.
No, I like Cal because they lead the country with 17 interceptions, and Kyle McCord likes to throw the ball to the other team.
Why do you keep doing this? Didn't we do this stat with UNLV, though? Didn't UNLV lead the nation in interceptions before the Syracuse game? And Kyle McCord was like, bring it. Won in overtime. Boom.
Yeah, bring it when they won in overtime. Yeah, when they won very easily in overtime. Yeah, but it's not like they ran through them.
I guess the 7-2 UNLV team. Syracuse this year's played in Boston, Vegas, and Berkeley.
Yeah.
How about that?
They're all over the place.
I'll take
Kyle McCord only threw 1 pick against UNLV.
I don't want to live in a world where people have to tell me that Cal's good at football. It's just that's not me. Rutgers at Syracuse at Cal. Yeah, we already did. All right.
Yeah.
38-28 me for Syracuse, 31-20 Cal for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got me all frazzled. Cal is good. Okay. Rutgers at Maryland, Northern Banger, 6 Eastern. Mm-hmm. Maryland at home, favored by 5.5, Bill.
Yeah, so we got to call this game something, right? This is one of the Big Ten's protected rivalries. There are 12 of them. This is one of them. It doesn't have a name. I think there was a time a couple of years ago where they're like kicking around a trophy for this.
We talked about this last year. It's like railroad ties. Yeah,
we could do a railroad tie. I think I'm more on like the Wawa Bowl. If you make it the Wawa Bowl and then you always play it in November, and like the winner can get the gobbler sandwich, which is the Thanksgiving sandwich that Wawa makes, I think that's where I'm at.
No objection.
Okay.
Please send it to Tony Petiti.
We will. The guy who's really good at promoting his league. Yeah, we'll get that out. We'll get that out to him. Maryland has owned this series since these teams joined the Big Ten in 2014. Maryland is 7-3 against Rutgers. Won 3 in a row. And the last time they played in College Park, Maryland won 37-0. So
what is happening?
It's kind of a weird regional rivalry. You might expect it to be a little more even than, although Rutgers was quite bad for a stretch when it first joined the Big Ten. It was truly awful for a couple of years, but that was 37-0 2 years ago. That was a better Rutgers program. Rutgers is 5-4, looking for bowl eligibility. Has Maryland, Illinois, Michigan State left. Maryland's 4-5, also still alive to get to the postseason. Has Rutgers, Iowa, and Penn State left, which is to say, like, they're not going to beat Penn State, so you got to get this one and the Iowa game to try to get to bowl eligibility if you're Mike Locksley. So there's actually some stakes here for both of these teams, like a sneaky kind of game with implications. It does. So Greg Schiano doesn't talk about injuries, but he did say about Kyle Monungai, who did not play last week against Minnesota, that he was close to playing in that game. So if he was close to playing in that game, I would expect he's going to play in this one. It kind of sounded like they just felt like he was like pretty banged up and they were riding him a lot, had a lot of wear and tear, like he needed to rest for a game. So they gave him some last week, but I'm expecting him to be back. So I think this is really interesting. I'm excited to watch it. I have Rutgers winning 28-24 and snapping its losing streak to Maryland.
I have Rutgers 24-20, so we're both taking the underdog in this game. I might put a little $2 Doug special on that too. Yeah, in the Wawa Bowl. Just bet enough to win yourself a gobbler sandwich. That should be how much you bet in this game. But then, like, if there's no Wawa, if you're just not near Wawa, then you have to add the gas and pay $120 in gas to go get a turkey sandwich. Cincinnati at Iowa State. This is 8 p.m. Eastern. Iowa State at home, favored by 9.5. I'm going to call this the Goodwill Hunting Bowl because I'd like to say to both teams, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Because Cincinnati outplayed West Virginia last week, as we talked about on Monday, and West Virginia made 5 plays and beat them. And Iowa State, again, I don't know if you watched it, but I watched the Kansas-Iowa State game. Iowa State, I thought, was Rocco Becht is just ripping throws. Now, he missed a wide open tight end in the end zone on a great design play from the 5-yard line. The guy was 30 yards open, and Rocco Becht threw it over his head. And then at the end of the game, after Iowa State was coming back, they're down 10. They did a good job getting depth and coverage, and he had to was trying to squeeze in a slant or a ball in the middle of the field and sailed it a little bit. But he was great. And Jalen Noel is great. And Jaden Higgins is great. And they had a 4th down stop that I thought they had blocked up well in the back, didn't cut it up the way he should have. And like Kansas just would have beaten Kansas would have beaten anybody last week. Kansas would have beaten Georgia. Kansas would have beaten Alabama by 20 last week. They just happened to play Iowa State. So I really like Iowa State. Like, are you serious with the scores? I really like Iowa State coming back home and just handling business here after a tough home loss to Texas Tech, a tough road loss at Kansas. Can we remind people that Iowa State's still good? But I also would like to remind people that Cincinnati's still good. So I think this is going to be a really good football game. Tyson Veit, first-year Cincinnati defensive coordinator. They got him from Iowa State. That's very important. Scott Satterfield, the Cincinnati head coach, said, obviously, we are playing Iowa State, a defense that we hired Coach Tyson from, so it gives us more familiarity with their defense. So he kind of admitted all the stuff that the media loves to ask about. Hey, this guy used to work there. Hey, you used to know this guy. Hey, does that matter? Scott Satterfield said, yeah, it actually might help us a little bit going against Iowa State. And then Scott Satterfield was very enamored with the idea that the stats for these teams are exactly the same. Did you see that at all?
I didn't see that, no.
Yards per game. Iowa State is 29th in the country with 439.6. Cincinnati is 30th in the country with 438.6. Cincinnati averages 170.6 rushing yards. Iowa State averages 168.1. Iowa State averages 271.4 passing yards. Cincinnati averages 268. Iowa State's defense is a little bit better, but they are the same. And Scott Satterfield thought that was kind of cool. Can I also drop some knowledge on you?
Please.
2009 Toledo coaching staff. I believe that team had a losing record. 2009 head coach Tim Beckman. 4 current head coaches were on that staff for 2009 Toledo. Jason Candle, who is now the Toledo head coach. Alex Golish, who is now the South Florida head coach, who was the Tennessee offensive coordinator. And Matt Campbell and Scott Satterfield. Matt Campbell was the offensive line coach and the run game coordinator. Scott Satterfield was the quarterbacks coach and the passing game coordinator. So they worked together at Toledo, and look at them now. Plus, Steve Klinkscale, who was a really good assistant at Michigan and followed Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers, was on that staff. And Eli Rashid, who's the defensive line coach for Iowa State, followed Matt Campbell from Toledo, was on that staff. So that staff was stacked with dudes. And Tim Beckman still couldn't get them to win more than half their games.
I love that you're rattling off this coaching brain power. The one guy who's no longer a head coach is the guy who was the head coach.
The head coach. Not a huge Tim Beckman fan. But anyway, so Scott Satterfield and Matt Campbell know each other, and I think that's kind of cool. But I think this is going to be an Iowa State bounce back spot because I could feel a little bit on Monday that we were kind of like disappointed with Iowa State a little bit. Listen, man, they lost to Texas Tech by 1, and then they got rolled by a Kansas team that's finding itself, but they're still good. And I think this is a chance for them to remind people 31-23 Iowa State.
Yeah, I have 31-21 Iowa State. I don't disagree with anything you said. I think I've had issue with the way that Iowa State has started games, and I really do think that defense is in rough shape just because of all the injuries. But Iowa State ran into a red-hot quarterback and a red-hot offense last week, and that's not going to be the case against Cincinnati this week. So I have Iowa State by 10 at home.
Baylor at West Virginia for Eastern. West Virginia is a 2.5-point dog. Is this right? At home?
That is
against
right.
Baylor? Okay. What do you think of that?
I think this is a similar conversation, I think, to the Cal conversation. Like, you don't want people telling you that Baylor's good. Baylor's won 3 in a row, and is coming off of a bye. West Virginia's won 2 in a row. 2 hot teams. Showdown in Morgantown. West Virginia is 1-3 at home against Power 4 teams this year.
But it's because banger schedule. Banger schedule.
I was getting to it.
I just don't want you being mean to Neil Brown.
They beat Kansas, and they lost to Penn State, Iowa State, and Kansas State, who are a combined 22-5 at home.
Think of all those happy Mountaineer fans just enjoying that schedule. They're so excited to enjoy the schedule.
Yeah. We weren't wrong about really good teams coming to Morgantown this year.
We weren't.
We thought West Virginia might win more than one of them.
Yes.
And also beat Albany at home too. So there's that.
How about that?
Yeah, good for them. I think Garrett. So Neil Brown, as far as I've seen as of this morning, has not expressly said whether or not Garrett Green will play. But there were some people poking around on the betting apps where like Garrett Green to score a touchdown had like, it was like minus 135, which is like they think he might do it in this game, so they didn't want to give you good odds on it. So I think people are using that as an indication that Garrett Green will play. And Neil Brown has said in the past too, like he does not think that Garrett Green should lose his job because he got injured. I think maybe he'd sing a different tune if Nico Marchiol was awesome the last time they played, and he wasn't. They just found a way to win anyway. So I think we're going to get Garrett Green back here, and I think maybe we'll get a good refreshed Garrett Green at home. In front of a fan base that I think probably still mostly wants Neil Brown to be fired. So they might be angry that he gets a win here, but I have West Virginia winning 35-31.
I have West Virginia 23-20, and that could be really nice. If that's how this worked out, that like Garrett Green got a rest, they still found a way to win at Cincinnati last week, and they come back home and get him refreshed. That could be a real thing for the Mountaineers, who again are still there waiting for some upsets in the Big 12. As Neil Brown said, a 2-loss team, like still hanging around, so they're not out of it. UCLA at Washington. This is a Friday night game.
Yep,
9 p.m. Eastern. Washington is favored by 4 at home. It's going to be a blackout. It's going to be their senior night. 26 seniors are going to be honored. And I just thought, like, this Washington program, sort of what they've been through, I thought Jed Fish did a nice job of laying this out. It'll be fun, but we need an incredible crowd for a lot of reasons. Number one, we should honor the kids that stayed. Some of our players have been through 4 head coaches. Some have been through 7 coordinators. The COVID season, 4-8 in 2021, 14-1 that last year. And now they're going through their final year here and trying to figure out what their life is going to look like. So it's really important to honor them. So I thought that was a nice thing. Like it's been crazy. Nice. Like this crop of guys, like the COVID year, and like we understand, but like there's been a lot athletic director turnover at Washington, like that program, and the guys like Cam Fabiculanan, who we talked to at Big Ten Media Days, like those guys who stuck around, really, right? Like I think that group really deserve it. They are going to start Will Rogers. They took him out in the second half of the Penn State game because it just wasn't happening. Damon Williams is the future at quarterback. Jed Fish said they'll continue with like 15 to 20 plays for him. A lot in the red zone, right? That kind of thing. But they're not going to bench Will Rogers right now. And again, like I just kind of like where Jed Fish's head is at. And by the way, Billy Napier's not getting fired. So Jed Fish isn't going anywhere, right?
Well, we'll see if Billy Napier gets fired.
But they said they're not firing him. They said they put out a statement and said we're not firing him.
Yeah, is that binding? I don't know.
It's like the alliance. It's like, oh, yeah, okay. So this is why they're sticking with Will Rogers, according to Jed Fish, for a few reasons. Number one, he's led us all season long. He's 5-0 at home. He has done a fantastic job against both Michigan and USC in our home games here. And the Northwestern game, he's been a fantastic leader since arriving here. There wasn't anything that occurred on Saturday night that I would hold him solely responsible for, that would have caused us to say, hey, there's no way we're going to win this game otherwise. So I have total faith that we're going to win the game with Will as the starting quarterback. And I do too. They're a different team at home. I think this is the Washington home monster, right? Whatever Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, whoever the scary one is with Bugs Bunny, the scary monster is them at home. And then they go out on the road and they're Elmer Fudd. 42-21 against UCLA. Handle business. Will Rogers, seniors, Carson Bruner, they're a great linebacker, hurt his shoulder against Penn State, but he's going to play. It's all good. Send those seniors who hung around out, send them out right, man, with a big win.
I said last week that I thought Iowa was going to beat UCLA, but then UCLA would win its remaining games to get the bowl eligibility. But then Iowa just decided to lose to UCLA. So now I don't have to stick with that prediction. So I have Washington winning here. UCLA is I think actually like among the most improved teams in the country. I know that's weird to say about a team with this record, but like they're playing much better now than they were at the beginning of the year. And I think that defense is very good, but it's more of a run stopping defense than it is I think a defense is going to really slow down an explosive passing attack. So I think Will Rogers, Denzel Boston are going to throw the ball on this team a little bit. I don't have a blowout. I could see it because it's at home, it's senior, like all those things. I could see it, but I have 27-20 Washington winning. And
while we're talking about UCLA, producer Mike says that Pete Thamel from ESPN is reporting that Martin Jarmond, the athletic director at UCLA, has agreed to a 3-year extension through 2029. Jarmond, former assistant AD at Ohio State, former AD at Boston College, helped lead UCLA into the Big Ten. Good guy. All right. G5 game number 1, Boise State at San Jose State, 7 p.m. Eastern. Boise State is basically a 2-touchdown favorite at home, and yeah, bring it.
You're rolling with Ken Niumatalolo, huh?
I am.
Okay. Would you like me? Did you know? I guess I should ask you that Boise State is 15-1 all time against San Jose State?
No.
Okay, just putting it out there. They can flip the script. San Jose State's a good Mountain West team. 6-3, 3-2. They're in fourth place by themselves in the standings, behind Boise, Colorado State, and UNLV. It's a big game in the conference title race, obviously. Although Boise State, like I said, is undefeated and would also have the win in hand over UNLV, so would have to drop a couple, I think, to not get into the Mountain West title game. But this is a spot, I think, potentially for Boise. They're 13.5-point favorites on the road, so maybe not as much as we're making it out to be. And San Jose State, I think, does not have a great rushing defense, which is what you want to have when you're going up against Ashton Genty. But I think it is, I don't know, potentially interesting. We'll see. I don't think Boise's going to lose. I have them winning 28-17. You have San Jose State winning.
San Jose State 34-30. Boise State was tied with Nevada at 14 at the half last week. There's some stuff. I just wonder if there's some stuff, right? So this is, everyone's got Boise in the playoff. Every time the bracket comes out, everybody talks about it like Boise in the playoff. And it's like, okay, we should be able to navigate this. As the Mountain West, we get it. And I just think maybe somebody gets them. And Ken Niumatalolo is a good coach and knows how to win games like this. And so I'm just, again, I feel like I'm missing upset picks. So I
don't hate the swing. Yeah, I don't hate the swing. One more thing we're not picking it, but another Mountain West banger Friday night, the battle for the boot, Colorado State, Wyoming. Colorado State, as we said, unbeaten in the Mountain West. So they don't drop one there. They could be seeing Boise in the Mountain West title game.
Yeah. Interesting. The other G5 game we are going to talk about, this matters in the American. It's Tulane at Navy. This is a noon Eastern start. Navy is a 7-point home dog. So they got blown out. Navy did 51-14 by Notre Dame. Then they followed it up by going on the road at Rice and losing, but they got it back against South Florida last week. So this is still a good Navy team, Bill. 7-2, and this really matters if you want to see a Navy Army American Athletic Championship game, and then also see them play the next week in the Army Navy game. Like, Navy has to win this to keep that alive, and I kind of want to see that. Don't you kind of want to see that?
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind seeing it. I just like Tulane's good. Tulane's really good.
Why do I have to live in a world where Tulane is good? Tell me. No, I know Tulane almost beat Kansas State in week 2.
Did you see? I actually hadn't bothered to go and look at some of the scores. I just know that they've won a bunch in a row. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 in a row. 41-33, 45-10, 71-20, 24-10, 45-37, 34-3, 52-6.
Yeah,
Pasty,
and there was
it's like Temple and Charlotte who suck, but like they're really putting it on some teams.
But that Kansas State Tulane game, it was like Tulane has a better quarterback. So like they've been putting points on people. Yeah. In the American standings, Army is 7-0. Army is off this week and then plays Notre Dame. So they only have one more conference game left. So Army is 7-0. Tulane is 6-0. Navy is 5-1. So this really, I mean, unless it gets loose, this is a play-in game to get into the American championship game against Army. So like there's a boatload of stuff on the line here. I'd watch this game. This is a noon Eastern start on Saturday. Last one's the Cram It game, Tennessee at Georgia, 7:30 Eastern. Georgia is a 10-point favorite at home, and we don't know if Nico Iamaleava is going to play, and that stinks. So,
it feels like it's, I can't figure it out. Like the report makes it feel like he's not going to play, but then Heupel makes it sound like he is going to play. So I don't know.
Yeah. So I don't even know how to analyze it then. So Nico Iamaleava was a 5-star quarterback from California. He's super tall. He looks like Kevin Durant playing quarterback. He played in the bowl game last year against Iowa and looked good. And now he's been the starter all year. And Tennessee's in the thick of the playoff race, and Tennessee beat Alabama. And he hasn't been perfect. Tennessee's actually a defense first team, but they're a defense first team with like a super talented young quarterback, which is a really interesting package of skills. And I certainly want Tennessee to go beat Georgia, because rooting against Georgia is one of our tenants here at KOTN. But if Nico doesn't play, they're not going to beat him.
If Nico doesn't play, I don't think they can beat him either. And either way, I just like both these offenses, I think, are pretty limited, and their defenses, especially their defensive lines, are both really good. Like, I think it is a very low scoring Georgia win.
So, and let me back off that. If Carson Beck throws 3 picks and James Pierce, who like is going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft, like is tearing Carson Beck's arms off, maybe Tennessee can win even without Nico, and they just dial it back and try to win 12-10. So I don't want to take away the chance for Georgia to lose. That's not what I want to do here on a Thursday show. So. But watching, like, if you care about this game, and we'll certainly talk about it at least a little bit on Saturday night, like whether Nico Iamaleava plays is a huge deal. So I have Georgia 28-21, but you're probably right. I probably went too high on this.
Yeah.
Okay. Dragon statue. Who won it last week? This is where we do fantasy picks, and someone gets a dragon statue, and I started off hot, and now I suck at it.
Yeah, I want a little bit of a heater. Here. I won. So I had Shedeur Sanders and Jeremiah Love last week. Jeremiah Love actually didn't have a huge game, but he did score. Shedeur Sanders had a nice fantasy game. You had Dylan Gabriel, and your problem was Caleb Johnson. Caleb Johnson didn't give you what you needed there. So I won.
He scored a touchdown, and early on I was like, "Here we go," and then it was like, "Nope."
Yeah. So I won 40.9 to 33, which I think is 3 in a row now for me.
It is 3 in a row for you, and you now lead 6-5 overall. Yeah. So I was up 3-0, and now you have won 6 of the last 8. So Look at you living your best life.
We're Baylor.
Great. Tell me why Bill is good at the dragon statue again. Why is Bill good at the dragon statue? I don't know. Who are you taking this week?
This week, I am taking Penn State quarterback Drew Aller against Purdue.
How dare you? How dare you take
Washington receiver Denzel Boston?
You know what we should do?
UCLA.
We don't do this to me. Why are you doing this? Next year when we do this, we should each be able to draft like blocks that like guys that only we can take, because I don't like that you're taking Denzel Boston against me.
Oh, you took Boston already.
No, I know, but I don't want to have to go against him. So, okay.
You took Boston 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
You feel good about Drew Aller and Denzel Boston? You like these picks for yourself?
I actually don't feel tremendous about Drew Aller because it could be a game where Penn State just runs for 6 touchdowns and Drew Aller doesn't actually throw any. So, but I hadn't picked him. I guess I could have saved him, but I'm hoping maybe he throws like 3 touchdowns against a bad Purdue defense.
Okay. All right. So I was teetering a little bit with my quarterback, but then I rewatched. I don't know if you watched it, but I watched the Iowa State-Kansas game. And Rocco Becht, baby. Rocco Becht. Let's go. I took Jalen Noel, the Iowa State receiver, earlier this year. I'll take Rocco Becht this week. And then I know you took Ty Felton, because I think the first time you won the Dragon statue was on the back of Ty Felton, the incredible Maryland receiver. And I have not taken him yet. So I wanted to make sure that I did take him at some point this year. So I'm going Rocco Becht, Iowa State, Ty Felton, Maryland. What we do, we each take a quarterback and a skill player from the North. Once you take a guy, you can't use him again. So we have 2 weeks left. And I have I'm tracking all my guys who I got to make sure I use. And I really kind of shot my wad last week with Dylan Gabriel and Caleb Johnson, and it wasn't good spots for them. It's my fault. Yeah. It's not their fault. It's my fault.
I did. I took Rocco Becht too. I won that. That was a week where you and I both were off on our picks, and I won a very low scoring week. But I have not used Rocco yet.
Okay.
I have used Rocco already. Excuse me.
That's it for this Thursday show. We will have a betting show Friday morning with Tyler Shoemaker. We'll have a live post-game show 11 p.m. Eastern on Saturday night, and then we will be back on Monday to wrap up the stuff that needs to be wrapped up, including that BYU-Kansas game that really is going to matter and is going to be played in the middle of the night. So, still having fun, Bill? You still like the fact we're doing this?
Yeah, I'm having a great time. I just got to make sure I close out the fantasy matchups on a winning streak.
Okay. Yeah. So I just want to thank Northern ball teams, man. Like, how interesting are they making it? Like, we just have so much good ball to talk about. Like, we're not having to fake it. There's actually games that I almost feel bad when I was trying to pick the games this week of what should we spend a little more time on and a little less time on. I was like, I would do 15 minutes on Cincinnati, Iowa State. I would have no problem with that. I do 15 minutes on Michigan State, Illinois, but we have too many good games.
We do.
So,
sorry, the North's so good at football.
Sorry, the North's so good at football. That's a good T-shirt too. Oh, sorry, the North's so good at football. Sorry, Paul. All right. Thanks to our producer, Mike Urostowski. He always makes us look good and sound good. Thanks to you guys for being here. Give us a thumb, subscribe, tell a friend about what we're doing here, talking Northern ball. He's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of the North.